Landingham. He was as well known as Charles Lindbergh was in his time and the Wright brothers in their time. He was a Dayton personality who was known nationwide. He was a total troublemaker. He was born in 1820 in Eastern Ohio. He got a law degree in Pennsylvania, moved to Dayton, and started a newspaper called the Dayton Empire. Probably everything would have went fine for him had not the Civil War occurred. He was the Cindy Sheehan of his day. He hated the Civil War. He started trouble over that war wherever he traveled. He actually, the word got back to Abraham Lincoln, which was pretty difficult in those days because there wasn't television or telephones or even a telegraph. Lincoln was so bothered by the insurrection that he was starting here in Dayton, they had General Ambrose Burnside take time out from the Civil War to come from Cincinnati with a detachment of people to take him prisoner. That's another story because General Burnside, who had big mutton chops here, that's where the term sideburns came from, but that's another story. But General Burnside took the Landingham prisoner and put him down south, where he then met up with a co-conspirator, a female spy who had a little affair with, who then relayed plans of the North to Jefferson Davis. Well, the South didn't trust him either, so they took him to Wilmington, South Carolina, and put him on a ship where he was sailing around out in the ocean. He bribed the guy to drop him off. They took him up to Canada. They left him off up there. He was on the ship for months, and a book was written about that, which was a bestseller at that time called A Man Without a Country by Everett Hale. And I believe that there's a movie made about this maybe back in the 1940s. But anyway, he got to Canada. He's still in exile. He ran for governor of Ohio from Canada and lost by 100,000 votes. So in 1864, he snuck back in Ohio, even though he wasn't supposed to be here. And the war was kind of winding down by that time, so no one paid attention to him. And he then unsuccessfully ran for a couple of other offices. He then went back to resume his law practice and got rid of the newspaper, which is another story I'll tell you down here. And he defended a guy who was accused of murder. So he went to the Golden Lamb, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, down in Lebanon, with a bunch of other attorneys, and he was in the process of telling them how his client could not have killed this guy. And he had the murder weapon. And he said it couldn't have happened because it was an accident. It was like this. And he pulled the trigger, and that's why he's here today. And that is the end of the story of Mr. Vallandigham, and I'm wondering why there's never been a made-for-TV movie about this guy. Because he really led an interesting life, and certainly for the time that he lived, he hated Lincoln, he hated the Republicans and what they were doing. He thought that if the South was freed or taken over by the Union, that the slaves would come up here and take all of our jobs, which was basically why he led that movement. Fortunately, not many people paid attention to it.
Bollmeyer. Now this guy was a friend of Clement Vallandigham, and he, a peace Democrat, and you know they protested Lincoln and they protested the war, and somebody shot him, and his wife was convinced it was a conspiracy, and she wrote, "Killed by the hand of an assassin, martyr to the cause of freedom of speech." Well, the board here, the association didn't think that was because, you know, public opinion. They didn't like what they were saying about a Mr. Brown that shot him. And he was found innocent. But she still wanted to put that out there into the public, and the public didn't like it. So the board told her she couldn't do it. And she said, well, I'm not going to change it. And they said, well, you're not going to put it here if you don't. So she finally gave in, and they changed assassin to violence, and they changed martyr to friend. So you can see where they scratched it out, and they, you know, they had to etch that out, and that was the only way she could put his headstone in here.
I am playing the character of Howard Forer. I'm one of nearly 3,500 veterans who are interred here at Woodland. This site right here is specifically for the Civil War. There are about 600 soldiers from the Civil War here. We do have here at Woodland soldiers from every war the United States has been engaged in.
Who could forget Esther Price? We have all sampled her fine chocolate candies. Among the memorials of the 104,000 residents in Woodland, you will find the Daniel Beckel Monument with the sculptured bee-high on top. Daniel was the owner of the Beckel Hotel and Opera House in downtown Dayton. The bee-high symbolizes going to the land of milk and honey. A stump or log, axe, wedge, maul, and other woodworking motifs are commonly seen on Woodman of the World Monument. John Stoddard owned the Dayton Motor Car Company. A Stoddard Auto was the first pace car at the first Indy 500 in 1911 and then again in 1913 and 1914. James Middleton Cox was a three-term governor of Ohio. Cox ran for President of the United States in 1920 and lost. His running mate at the time was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Valentine Winters was the founder of the Winters National Bank and the great-grandfather of the comedian Jonathan Winters. Towards the end of his life, Valentine distributed some of his wealth by putting checks for tens of thousands of dollars under dinner guests' plates. Gustav Wadecki was a turn-of-the-century industrialist. His monument is life-sized and has frightened more than one guard at night. Private George Washington Fair served in the Civil War with his 6 brothers. He was the model for the Civil War Monument downtown at Main and Monument. Lauren M. Berry was the inventor of the Yellow Pages. Let us not forget about John Glosanger, who popularized the O. Henry candy bar. In the mid-1800s, Pearl Street in downtown Dayton had 38 brothels, employing 150 prostitutes. The queen of Pearl Street was Elizabeth Richter, better known as Lib Hedges. She set her sister up in business with a red brick house, having 7 bedrooms on the 2nd floor. Her working name was Lucia LaFontaine. When her sister died in 1894, Lib had her buried in Woodland Cemetery in an imposing plot topped with a beautiful statue. Some people call the statue the Fallen Angel. Lib is also buried in Woodland with her parents. Alongside Lib are 2 small headstones bearing only the names of Laura and Maud. One of the most common statues at Woodland is the obelisk. This is an upright, 4-sided pillar, gradually tapering as it rises and cuts off at the top in the form of the pyramid, symbol for the Egyptian god Re, who held the power to recreate, hence God, Lord over all, Creator. Woodland is known for its angels. Angels act as intermediaries between the deceased and God. The earliest depictions of angels were without wings in the Middle Ages, but during the Renaissance, to separate them from human forms, artists added halos, white garments, swords, harps, and wings, and portrayed the angel as heroic, beautiful, and glowing. Angels were also known as a symbol of protection for the deceased. The virtues are angels in woman's form of grace and valor, who brings God's blessing to earth. Faith is a woman with a cross and chalice. Hope is seen with an anchor, signifying hope. Charity in art is always portrayed nursing a baby. During the Victorian era, she was shown in the process of revealing a breast. Fortitude is most often seen as a female warrior. She is often shown in a confident stance with a sword or a large stick at her side. The cross as a symbol predates its association with Christianity and may be humankind's oldest symbol. Among pagan cultures, it signifies the division between heaven